Is your company hiring new developers and you're the one who's going to be interviewing the candidates? Then watch this video to be aware of the most important things when hiring developers to find the best fit for your company and your team. So interviews obviously look different at different companies, and mostly they differ because of the size of the company. The smaller the company is, the higher chances are the interviewing process will be much quicker, meaning you'll usually have around 3 rounds in the whole interview process, excluding the first headhunter call. Whereas in the big companies, it can even get up to 6 or 7 interview steps. At one of these steps, or let's call them rounds, the behavioral part comes into play, which means we're now far away from technology, be it theory or practice. But usually these behavioral questions come up in the pre-technical round or the post-technical round. In my point of view, behavioral questions play the final role in making a decision about whether the candidate should get an offer or not, since judging the candidate by only technical criteria is much easier after the technical interview. Hey, do a merge sort on a linked list. Done. Oh wait, it doesn't compile. So for that very reason, we're gonna be focusing on the behavioral part in this video. If you've already seen my previous video, you probably already know that I work at a mid-sized company in Germany as a lead front-end developer. Throughout my career, I had a chance to interview new candidates for my team in the first round and the third steps of the interview process. The first round being a simple chit-chat about the person's background and some information about the position, and the third round being a chit-chat about more technical things, also about the solution for the coding challenge. Now, for some reason, I never had a chance to have a live coding interview so far, but that's a different story. Also, the company I work at usually sends out coding challenges, at least for front-end developers, which candidates need to submit a solution for in a week. And then comes this chit-chat about the solution that the candidate has submitted before. The behavioral part in my company's interviewing process is usually included in the third and last round. And that's what you're gonna usually see in small and mid-sized companies. Now, obviously every interviewer has different sets of priorities and expectations when it comes to interviewing candidates. But since we're also social creatures as humans, social skills play a huge role at work. Since most of us, or most of the time, work in teams where our human skills are everything. So that's why the behavioral part basically exists. And as Google calls it Googleness, they basically try to find the candidate that suits their company culture the best. So how to exactly determine if a candidate has good social skills, is highly motivated and has high chances of succeeding in the company? Now, I don't expect the same type of questions to work for every company, of course, but in case of Google, they probably have a lot of psychologists within the company who have tailored the questions to fit the Google's company culture the best. But still, I'm gonna give you a list of things that really matter and some example questions to use to basically touch those points during the interview. So what are the social skills you should look in engineers and how to know whether the candidate has them? Often the interviewers and engineers completely avoid the social skills in the interview and jump straight into the technicalities, which is wrong. There can be days at your work where you don't even write a single line of code and rather communicate with your team. For example, when planning something. And speaking of planning, one of the most important social skills that a candidate must have is collaboration. Being able to collaborate properly is an essential skill for the developer and the team members to be on the same page. It also often leads to better relationships between the colleagues, which in fact increases the team performance as a whole. I personally see it as a top priority when selecting candidates because even if the technical skills are not on the best level, if the person is able to collaborate well, there's also a high chance that the person will learn fast from their colleagues. The second one is communication, which in fact comes in hand with collaboration. Without good communication, there can't be any collaboration. And it's also funny because communication is something that gets mentioned very often when engineers screw up and don't get the job done. Why did we miss this feature? Communication issue. And why wasn't she informed about it? We failed to communicate. The third one is leadership. Although leadership is considered a character-based trait that only managers or leads possess, it's something that every engineer can sharpen. It simply comes from a fact that a candidate is able to take responsibilities and practices decision-making on a day-to-day basis at work. For example, in a stress situation when deadlines are tight and something's obviously missing, be it a product feature or manpower, every engineer as a part of the team should be able to take a decision to some degree and bring their opinion to the manager and the rest of the team. Or another example, an engineer notices that something's lacking from the product, or there's kind of a small bug that everybody missed. And although that doesn't cover the competences or responsibilities of that particular engineer, the person still goes forward trying to find the right person in the whole company to inform the person about this issue, which is also related to taking responsibilities and doing something rather than minding just your own stuff. And last but not least, motivation. If the candidate has a high enough motivation, you can hands down neglect some of the technical incompetences. Motivation is what makes the person grow and get better every day. I don't think anybody would spend an hour watching an interesting tech conference on the weekend if the person had no motivation to try this out on the next day at work. Also imagine turning down a motivated candidate which didn't know some kind of a framework which they could have picked up during the next 2 weekends. As a developer, I can say this totally happens. So what questions should you ask to find the best fit? First useful thing to ask is what accomplishments the candidate is proud of and why. It can be a product, a feature, basically anything that can be concretely explained. This quick rundown through successes will help you understand the candidate's scope they've previously worked on and what the candidate considers an accomplishment. In a way, it's kind of a broad question, so there's no right or wrong answer, but nevertheless it gives you an overview of the candidate's past in a most natural way. Usually the candidate will take you to the needed direction themselves and reveal some details about the previously mentioned soft skills such as collaboration. To assess leadership, on the other hand, might be a bit more trickier than you expect. Not saying that other soft skills are not tricky at all, they are very much. But leadership can easily be imitated with a confidence in short term. One of the questions that can reveal the candidate's leadership skills in a way is asking, have you ever tried leading your team in a particular direction before? And if yes, was it done deliberately? Since this is a tough question, you should probably give some time to the candidate. Also, a simple question as, do you make friends or have good relationships with your colleagues lets you to simply see if a candidate has a good potential for being a good communicator and a collaborator in the team. The answer, of course, can depend on the candidate's personality and the previous company's work culture, but most of the companies nowadays don't make employees draw a line between their personal and work life. Of course, if a candidate habitually seems to be making friends and long-lasting relationships with colleagues, it's generally a good sign. It means they can do the job right, earn their colleagues' respect, and simply prove to be a good human. Last but definitely not least, there are questions about personal interests and hobbies of the candidate. Going to hackathons, coding competitions, open source projects, YouTube videos, taking Coursera courses, side projects, even if they have no plans of releasing anything. All of this can show that the candidate loves their profession and will try to get better every day and increase their knowledge. A candidate that does at least 2 things from this list is someone you don't have to worry about the motivation of in general. On the other hand, if a candidate is not actively engaged with any of these things in a fast-changing field of technology, then it's obviously a red flag. So these are the things from my personal observation and what works best for me in my case with behavioral questions. So as a quick summary, never forget that soft skills are as important as technical skills in our field, if not more important. And remember, you might play a bit of a psychologist to be able to prepare and assess the candidates from this perspective. Please leave a like if you like the content and subscribe for more videos like this. Bye!